Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with a presentation focused on the nature of the Vietminh War against the French. Now, at the end of World War II, the French initiated a military campaign against the Vietminh, and by February 1946 had re-established control of southern Vietnam. Negotiations took place in Paris for a permanent solution, but events in Vietnam drifted towards war. By the end of 1946, France controlled Hanoi, though the Vietminh remained in control of much of rural, northern and central Vietnam, and they were doing everything they could to consolidate their control, whilst the French, though eager not to get embroiled in a costly war, nevertheless remained determined not to let Vietnam go. So that's the context. What was the war like? Fighting broke out between the French and the Vietminh at the end of 1946. It would last 7.5 years. The French, with superior firepower, quickly gained the upper hand. Just as quickly, the Vietminh turned to guerrilla warfare. The French held the cities and most of the countryside in the south. The Vietminh built up their guerrilla forces in the north and in the mountains. As the French poured troops into Vietnam, they also tried to win the people over by building the Vietnamese economy and social structures, building dikes, schools, and providing improved healthcare, for example. But at the same time, they retaliated wherever they thought they detected local support for the Vietminh, shooting the peasants' water buffalo, burning villages to the ground, raping women, and executing men. The Vietminh, for their part, continued to target collaborators. In the first years of the war, fighting was actually limited, but Mao's victory in China at the end of 1949 changed things, as Mao supplied the Vietminh with arms, including artillery, and gave them safe camps to train their forces. Fighting intensified throughout 1950, with Vietminh forces scoring several key victories in northern Vietnam. The Vietminh forces were led by General Vo Nguyen Giap, and his strategy was twofold: guerrilla warfare first to wear down the enemy, before moving to set-piece battles, conventional warfare, if you like. And it was a highly successful strategy. Much as Uncle Ho Chi Minh is rightly seen as the father of the Vietnamese nation, it was actually Giap who won the war. In 1952, he had more than 250,000 men and women directly under his command, a significant force, even before you add the some 2 million who were in the guerrilla militias. Not only that, each division was supported by an army of porters, some 40,000 strong, who would carry supplies along the jungle trails and up and over the mountain passes. The soldiers carried their rifle, ammunition, grenades, a change of clothes, a blanket and a mosquito net, and a week's supply of rice. They were already following the guerrillas' code, introduced by Mao in the Chinese Civil War. Be polite and fair when dealing with the peasantry. Return everything borrowed. Don't bully. Try not to cause damage, and if you do, pay for it. Do not fraternize with women. In the second half of 1953, the French established a fortress at Dien Bien Phu in northwestern Vietnam, first to protect Laos. But the French strategy became to draw the Vietminh into a decisive battle at Dien Bien Phu. But it was a stupid place to do so, in a long valley surrounded by hills. The Vietminh not only surrounded the French forces, but also shocked the French by successfully man-hauling heavy artillery supplied by the Chinese up the surrounding mountains. With the French troops trapped, they requested American air power, but President Eisenhower set preconditions: French consent to independence, an international coalition, and he needed congressional approval, none of which were met, and so air support was not provided, though he did secretly supply them. Dien Bien Phu fell to the Vietminh in May 1954. The French had 12,000 men garrisoned there. 2,000 French died. The remaining 10,000 were taken prisoner. It was a crushing defeat for the French. The war journalist Bernard Fall described it as hell in a very small place, and wrote a book with that as its title. The French themselves referred to the whole war as the Dirty War. There had been much brutality, and the French had used napalm. Now, I have been to Vietnam a few times, and when I was there I bought a few Vietnamese books, translated into English of course. One was really a biography of Ho Chi Minh. The other was written by Giap, titled Dien Bien Phu. And of the victory, Giap writes, "Of giant progress, a momentous change in the evolution of the war of resistance for national salvation, put by our people against the aggressive French imperialists propped up by US interventionists, thus creating a decisive factor for the victory of the resistance." Now, of course, it's a propaganda piece, written for the Vietnamese people. But it's interesting to get the Viet Minh's, Viet Cong's perspective, and you can't really argue with what he writes in this short extract. For the Vietnamese it was a war of resistance, a war against French imperialists, propped up by US interventionists. He talks of a war of national salvation. We call it a war of independence. Same thing. And the Viet Minh did win. So, I hope this proves useful for you. The French War, the War of Resistance, is not written about so much, so it should prove useful for you. Don't forget that if you feel you would benefit from tutorials, just get in touch with me, or get your parents to get in touch at historymadeeasier@gmail.com, and we'll see if we can sort something out. But for now, let me thank you, as always, for listening, and wish you the very best of luck in your studies. Cheers.